influencer and Gucci model at the age of 75. And we've also got TV personality and mathematician, the legendary Johnny Ball. But first, let's go to the news.
Thanks, Lee. Good evening. I'm Ray Addison in the GB Newsroom. Our top stories. The Prime Minister says the world needs to do more to tackle climate change. Addressing the COP28 summit in Dubai, Rishi Sunak urged major polluting countries to follow the UK's example in slashing emissions. He also announced £1.6 billion for international climate finance and promised that the government's green policies will not hurt taxpayers' pockets.
The United Kingdom is totally committed to net zero, the Paris Agreement, and to keeping 1.5 alive. That's why we've decarbonised faster than any other major economy. Our 2030 target means the deepest cuts of any major emitter, and we're determined to deliver. But instead of putting more pressure on working people, we're choosing a pragmatic new approach. We're ramping up renewables and embracing the opportunities of technology and green industry.
Israel Defense Forces say they've struck over 200 terror targets since Hamas violated the terms of the pause in fighting. Locations in the north and the south of Gaza have all been hit, including operational command centres. The week-long truce collapsed after Hamas fired a rocket in the early hours of this morning. They then continued bombarding Israel this afternoon. Mediators from Qatar and Egypt are working to try to continue the release of hostages. The former Health Secretary says he was warned in April of 2020 about the need for focused COVID testing in care homes. Matt Hancock told the UK COVID-19 inquiry there was not as much testing in care homes as many would have wanted because the UK simply did not have enough tests. He also said the rule of six and tiers did not go far enough to help stop the spread of the virus. Mr Hancock accused former PM Boris Johnson of being unwilling to go further in terms of national restrictions and said that the government should have acted more swiftly. And members of ASLEF have voted overwhelmingly to continue strike action for the next 6 months in their ongoing dispute over pay. The announcement comes as members at 16 train companies are refusing to work overtime. That's from today until next Saturday. Companies said they will operate as many trains as possible, but some areas may have no services. The union has blamed the government for not negotiating. The rail delivery group says drivers have been offered a £5,000 pay rise. This is GB News across the UK on TV, in your car, on digital radio and on your smart speaker by saying, play GB News. Now let's get back to Mr Anderson.
Welcome to Lee Anderson's Real World, and today I'm joined by my brilliant guest, which is Mario Trabucca Tella Torretta. He's an Italian historian, well, Sicilian, sorry about that, Mario. And back has left in the corner, we've got Stephen Pound. He's back for about the 15th time. He's a secret Tory, he won't admit it, but we're going to get down to some nitty-gritty today. Mario, in the news this week, Elgin Marbles, the Greek Prime Minister wants them to go back to Athens. Should they go?
No, definitely not. They should remain, and I think Rishi Sunak has been quite right in asserting our legitimate right to own these sculptures that were legitimately acquired by Lord Elgin from the Ottoman Empire, which was the legitimate and internationally recognized power that owned the city of Athens back in 1801.
Okay, so Mario, these are what we class as an ancient artifact. So I'm going to go over to another ancient artifact, which is Stephen Pound. he's our left in the corner. Now, Stephen, 20 odd years ago when he was an MP,
yep.
Did you sign some sort of motion, an EDM to...
I did. Listen, as far as I'm concerned, there's better ways of getting your rocks off than panicking, going on and getting obsessive about the Parthenon sculptures. As far as I'm concerned, send them back. We all know what they look like. The problem is that when they were on the Parthenon and the frieze there, as you know, the Turks on the Ottoman Empire used them as target practice. Yeah. And so they shot great lumps of them off. And the worry is, if we send them back to Athens, one of the most polluted cities on God's green earth, south, would they actually still be there in good nick? To be honest, I don't think it
It's hard to
matters.
answer the question there, because if we send them back, they're going to get damaged, they're going to be polluted. Surely, Mario, we should keep them here where they're safe.
I think this is besides the point, because Athens nowadays is not Athens as it was in 1983, and definitely not as it was in 1801. It's perfectly safe to have them in Athens, but it's not the point. The point is we own them legally. We got them legally when they were treating them as rubbish. And they were just scattered all over the place in the Acropolis. Some of them, they were re-employed and in poor constructions of all the houses that were around the temple back then. And then Lord Elgin basically said, you know what, they are meaningful to me. Can I have them? And they said, yes, by all means, you're welcome to them.
So surely, Stephen, that's a sensible thing to do. You're seeing ancient artifacts being mistreated, left on the floor to be damaged. Lord Elgin's seen them, he's brought them back, he's protected them, they're in a museum for the whole world to see.
I'm not entirely convinced that Lord Elgin's motives were entirely philanthropic. It also must have been an incredible job to actually ship them back. Imagine that in the days of sale. But look, the reality is that Mario makes a very important point. They were bought, but who were they bought from? This is not like the Benin bronzes and the various other things, like the sack of Peking, where the Brits went over there and grabbed everything left, right, and centre. This was not looting. This was actually illegal purchase. But I cannot understand why we're picking a fight with Mitsotakis and the Greek Premier. We need all the friends we can get, Lee. Since your lot got us out of Europe, we need some friends, mate.
Who's picking the fight here?
I think it's the Prime Minister, the Greek Prime Minister, that is picking the fight, because for us, this is a settled matter. We have thoroughly investigated the question. Two of the highest tribunals in this country, a select committee of Parliament and Parliament itself, have already judged on the legality of the acquisition. And for us, that's the way it is. It's history. 30 years later than the facts, the Greeks come, constitute themselves into a nation and say, you know what was happened 30 years ago, I didn't like, therefore I want them back. And this started ever since, and especially got a big kick when Melina Mercouri, the Greek cultural secretary, in 1983, called UNESCO and say, I want to lodge a request, a formal claim.
Stephen, where does this stop? Because it's the marbles today, and then tomorrow it'll be something else, then it'll be museums in a different country, maybe the Hermitage Museum in St. Petersburg, who's probably got artifacts from different countries all over the world.
Well, I think the important thing is, Lee, I know they speak of little else in Ashfield. You cannot walk down the street or go to a pub in Ashfield without people bending their ear about the Parthenon marbles or the Elgin. This is almost an irrelevance. But as far as I'm concerned, the Parthenon marbles, the Parthenon sculptures are a slightly unique artifact. There's nothing quite like them. This is not like, as I said, the Benin bronzes and some of the other things. As far as I'm concerned, why on earth are we beating ourselves up about this? We can have a perfectly good replica in the British Museum that is indistinguishable from the present one. Let them go. Let's have a few friends. Let's try to make friends with people in Europe instead of actually constantly looking for more arguments and more ways to have a
Stephen
fight.
talks about replicas.
No, I definitely disagree for two reasons. One is the replica argument falls on this question. If a replica is good enough for us, it's good enough for the Greeks as well, surely. So the other bit is you put a replica to own the building itself, basically. And that's exactly what you can only do with a replica, because even if we give the Parthenon marbles that we have to the Greeks, they're going to put them into another museum. They are not going to reunite the fragments with the monument. This is something that they could do with a replica. And actually, we've already provided the replicas to them. Historically, the British Museum has given them replicas all over the 19th century. So it's something that basically cannot work this way. But also, I disagree on the fact that they are not meaningful to us. They are part of our history. We say that our civilization is founded on the values of classical antiquity. So these are basically artifacts that have shaped the way we are. Keats has written about them. Mary Shelley has wrote Frankenstein inspired by their state. Benjamin West, Lord Byron, absolutely. But Lord Byron was coming from a completely different point of view.
It was. Stephen, replicas. I would love to have a replica of you to bring back to Ashfield and knock on a few doors. Do you think that could be arranged?
But don't forget, Lord Byron actually died when he went out to fight for Greek independence. He died. But look, as far as I'm concerned, the Parthenon sculptures mean a lot to the Greeks. They mean a hell of a lot to the Greeks. I think they mean more to the Greeks than they mean to us in this country. As far as I'm concerned, let them have it. It means a great deal to them. It doesn't. It's not the end of the world for us. We have got the British Museum. 10% of the artefacts in the British Museum can be shown. 90% of them are actually in cellars and in basements. There's just so much stuff there. There's plenty of it.
In every museum.
Yeah.
Every museum has a first-tier kind of collection that is worthy of displaying. For example, I studied ancient market weights.
Yeah.
They have 435 of them, and yet they are displaying only 3 because there's no point in displaying copy after copy after copy after copy of the same thing. So you just select the best pieces, the ones that are most illustrative, and for public viewership, you put them in a.
But again, I guess what, Stephen? Now it's in the news, and we've got two nations sort of having a bit of a bicker about the Elgin marbles. Then more people will actually go and look at the Elgin marbles and see what all the fuss is about.
Well, I know you're a bit of an aesthete when it comes to this. I know you're very often seen wandering around the art galleries and the museums in London, and this probably appeals to you. But look, what the argument between Rishi Sunak and Mitsotakis is that apparently there's an agreement they wouldn't raise this issue at the negotiations. Mitsotakis then throws it in, maybe for domestic purposes, I don't know. But all I know is, are we going to keep on beating ourselves up about a lump of stone?
Yeah, I don't think you'll find me wandering around the art galleries in London, Stephen.
It's a lovely image, though, isn't it?
I mean, I do wander around London, but not around the art galleries.
Different sorts of galleries.
Final word, Mario, 30 seconds.
It's not about just a lump of stone. It's about the rule of law. It's about the sovereignty of parliament. If something has been obtained as the fruit of a legal acquisition in legal circumstances, and parliament have put a stamp on it, frankly, we should defend this.
Yeah. Well, that's it. We've had a long discussion about marbles, quite clearly. Stephen's not lost his quite yet, but they're rattling about somewhere. But look, do not go away. After the break, we've got mathematician legend and TV personality Johnny Ball. Do not go away.
Who is it?
We're here for the show.
Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with you three.
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox,
That's right, we want to hear from you,
GB News.
Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
Affects us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life.
your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquare, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle.
Could you be quiet? What is this? It's my new teeth. It's your new teeth.
I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Lee Anderson's Real World, and today I'm delighted to be joined by a bit of a legend, actually. This is Johnny Ball. He's a mathematician, a TV presenter, personality, a comedian, all-rounder, really, aren't you, Johnny?
I was. You could say I was at my age.
Look, my maths isn't great, but I know that you're of a certain age. Getting on a bit, I would say, but you're still very active. You still get out there.
Still working.
Still interested in mathematics, but you was a comedian at one time, weren't you?
Only 17 years. It was a passing thing.
What made you get into that sort of work?
And that's what I wanted to go. I became a Butlin Redcoat, did the forces 3 years, which made university, the RAF. Then did Butlins for 3 years. Which
Butlins was that?
Pwllheli, North Wales.
Funny, yeah, I've been there.
Yeah. And which I loved, and I love the forces. So everything was great. So after that, I was a comedian for 17 years. Loved it. The first year I was a pro, I got 9 nights off in the year. Did all the clubs. The only club Roy Orbison ever did in his life, they asked me to support him. The only club the Bee Gees ever did in their career, they asked me to support them as well. So I was a lovely time in the clubs. But I didn't see what I did in the clubs as going to television. I never did. Yeah. And I was already doing play school. And it's funny, but it was a beautiful contrast and a lovely different mood.
So how do you go from being in probably working men's clubs, rough, tough clubs, there's some characters in there, to doing a children's programme?
Well, they used to shout to me, "Still doing that play school, John?" I said, "Yeah, you're still watching it, are you?" And if they really heckled me, I said, "Another word and you're going through the square window." Yeah. So that was that. But they dovetailed, they worked very well together. Yeah. Everybody, the comics, Les Dawson and people like that, wondered what I was doing because they thought it would mar the comedy. Yeah. And I think from television point of view, it did. Okay. But I didn't want to do what I did in the clubs in television.
At school, you didn't leave with that many qualifications.
2 O-levels.
2 O-levels.
One was maths and the other one wasn't.
But in maths, what score did you get?
100%.
Really?
Yeah. And because they had to check it, because they couldn't understand it, because very few people got 100%.
So you're like a prodigy at school.
But I was in the 5th set. I was in lower 5. I was in 5E.
What does that mean?
The bottom set.
Okay.
So I'd fallen through the net, because as a lot of kids do, you see. And I was born in Bristol, and now I'd moved in secondary school. I was in Bolton, and before television, a Bristol accent in Bolton was just the same as talking Urdu. They didn't understand me. The teachers didn't understand me, and so I felt. But as soon as I left, worked for De Havilland Aircraft Corporation, and got a smashing job with them, and was on a business course, got 3 more O-levels on my own. So it was only school where it was a mess.
So why did you excel at maths, do you think, if you was in the bottom set?
Because my dad loved maths.
Yeah.
And my dad had me playing, literally before I could hold them, 9 dominoes, not 6s.
9s, yeah.
He always says 6s are for wimps, right? 9s. And taught me maths. And the only books I had was a set of 8 encyclopedias.
Okay.
And that's all I had to read at home. And honestly, so it all came through in the end, and it was lovely. And the thing about my career, apart from the fact it's still going on, is the variation has been just a joy. Yeah. Really has.
So play school, comedian, a mathematician.
Yeah.
Now, Rishi's been in the spotlight in the past few months, our Prime Minister, about making it compulsory for students to learn maths up to the age of 18. Now, maths is not the sexiest of subjects, and I guess, I didn't like maths. I didn't get it. I didn't understand why we needed it, because we've got calculators and computers. But how do we make it, Johnny, more interesting for young people?
Well, we've made it less interesting. When we did Think programmes, we checked where the best mathematicians were coming from, and they were coming from Singapore. Yeah. And when we checked why they were coming from Singapore, it's because they were still using the textbooks that we used in this country in the 1950s. Yeah. And that was in the 1970s, right? And I've got the first set that went metric. Yeah. And if you looked at that set and the maths that was taught in those days and compare it to the maths curriculum today, you'd be horrified. It's down to about a third. The other thing is, the Greeks, who were the greatest mathematical nation in the world, didn't do numeracy.
If you were the Secretary of State for Education and you could get stuck into some schools, especially with teaching maths, what would you change?
I would reduce numeracy, and I would reduce statistics in secondary, because machines do statistics very well.
Yes.
So all we need to do is understand the fundamental statistic, not how to do it ourselves.
Okay.
You see, and get geometry back in.
Because I guess with statistics, there's no point, is there, doing it if machines do them themselves?
If machines are doing it, as long as you understand what the statistics that the computer is telling you mean, then you're all right, you know. And you do that because you're a professional in that business.
Yes.
And the other thing is, when I was in the 90s and noughties, when I worked a lot for the government and for all kinds of people, I realised that every time there was an election, suddenly the curriculum was reduced in maths. Why? Because they thought, if we reduce the curriculum, we'll get better results. No, you get more boredom.
So I guess you're like a dynasty of entertainers, TV personalities. I mean, there's you, there's your daughter. I think, is your grandson getting involved in TV now?
Yes, there's a couple of firms thinking of doing a series for the three of us, which we'd love to do. We really would love to do, and I put some ideas forward, so they're all being considered. And Woody would love it. Woody's 23.
Is he a mathematical genius like his granddad?
No, but he had a good education. He went to Brighton College, which I suggested that he went to, and he did very well. And he's following his dad, and he's a DJ, but different to his dad, totally different. And that's lovely. And he's got a lot of spark. I talked to him at Christmas. You talk to a 22-year-old for an hour, as I did last Christmas to him, and you get a feeling of whether they are very young or very old, whether their mind is formed or whether it's scattered.
I understand that.
I found him incredibly lucid and incredibly understanding of today. So I was chuffed with that. I really was chuffed with that, because you don't see that with all young people.
So Johnny, spelt with an H. We've got a couple of books on there. Can we have a look at those?
Near Christmas, as I say, this is a farce. These books.
Can we just show the camera?
All about numbers, and all about maths. These are the second titles. At first, this was Think of a Number, and that was.
So what age are these for?
Mathematicians. This one probably primary, late primary. This one late primary, and definitely secondary as well. I get royalties from these today, and I have to say, 85% of it comes from China.
What do you mean comes from China?
In Chinese, they sell.
Oh, right, so there's
like
Chinese
mad.
people.
But 85% of and sadly, less than 5% comes from UK sales, and it's so sad.
Well, I mean, we see in schools today, I mean, some of the Chinese kids from the Chinese backgrounds doing a lot better than some of our own kids in maths and in English.
There's a parental motivation. There is with Asian kids as well, a parental motivation, which is strong. And sadly, not everywhere, but we are losing it to a certain extent in the UK. And our kids are, if they're becoming juvenile delinquents, it's because there's no direction for them.
So how do we solve that, John? Is that in the home? Is it at school?
There's lots of ways. I'm working for the Royal Aircraft RAF Benevolent Fund at the moment, and I'll be saying that with kids with no direction, I see the best thing, the one thing I would advise them is join the forces for as short a term as you can. And you can always resign.
So what would you say? I mean, Richard's come up with this plan to teach kids. He's had a bit of stick about it. I actually think he's trying to do the right thing by getting kids to learn maths. And if
he's right. We need everybody. We need all our kids to get the highest qualifications, and especially in maths. Maths makes the world go round. It is the basis. Without maths, it doesn't matter if you've got 17 languages and all kinds of other things. If you haven't got maths, then you'll be floundering to a certain extent. It's the mathematical eye that you need, the mathematical understanding that you need. And that's why the Greeks taught it with geometry, and they were the greatest nation. And Islam was brilliant, you see, because Islam found the Hindu numbers. The Hindus didn't export them, they found them. And Islam brought our number system to us today. And Islam created the Renaissance. So you can't condemn Islam. It was fundamentally, it was much better than the Christian religions in boosting religion.
Johnny, that has been fascinating.
I
Tried
haven't
to
stopped.
come about 80 years into 8 minutes. It's been a pleasure to meet you. You're one of them chaps that I grew up watching on TV, so it's a great pleasure to have you here. But look, do not go away, because coming up next we've got Right versus Left with Stephen Pound, he's back on the show, and Baroness Claire Fox.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. There's only 3 people you can trust in life: your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Acquia, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle. Could you be quiet?
What is this? It's my new teeth. It's your new teeth.
I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with you three.
Oh!
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays on GB News.
Joining me now for Left versus Right is Baroness Claire Fox. Thanks, Claire, for coming on the show for the very first time. Our residential left in the corner, Stephen Pound, is here for the umpteenth time. Now, earlier this week, I sat on the Home Affairs Select Committee where we got to grill Home Office officials, and have a look at this clip. Hi, guys. Just one question from me. Put foreign offenders aside and Albanians aside, just forget about those numbers. How many people travelling on small boats that's been refused asylum have been sent to a third country or back to their own country over the past 3 years?
I don't think we have. I think we'll write to the committee with those numbers, Mr. Anderson.
That's staggering.
Do we have any figures about anything?
Yes.
In the last 6 months, just how many in the last 6 months? The people who are coming here who are being refused asylum, because I'm sure there's a few, how many was sent back last month?
Incoming. We'll write to you with those numbers, Mr. Anderson.
I'm sorry, Chair, but I find it absolutely staggering what What do you think, Claire?
Not often I am gobsmacked and speechless, but when I saw it the first time, I couldn't get over the arrogance, the incompetence, and I think it's exactly what people dread in the country, that they feel that their concerns are just like, what are you asking that question for? And you know, it was apparently, why did they not think they were going to be asked that question? There is an inability to come to terms with the fact that we need to know what's happening on the borders. It's bad enough thinking they're out of control, but not even being able to give you even an approximate answer on any of the questions as you made it simpler. It was like when you started saying 6 months, this month, last week. And it was like, and they were kind of going, we'll get back to you. It's just not good enough.
But honestly, read it and weep. I mean, I have to say, I thought the most brutal interrogation on the Home Affairs Select Committee was the time when you actually lamped the Albanian ambassador and left him limping, back to his official residence. And I'm not blowing smoke here. I mean, it was a very, very good performance. But look, what was depressing about that is we constantly fool ourselves in this country that we have the best, most impartial, well-oiled machine of the civil service. That was embarrassing. Paper shuffling. Does anybody know the answer? As you say, Claire, the one question you knew that Lee was going to ask was that question, and they were
no disrespect to you, Lee.
Oh, go on, disrespect.
It wasn't as though you were asking really clever, penetrating questions. It was like stating the bleeding obvious, and you were asking an obvious question, which anyone could have, and they were like, "What?"
But isn't it typical of them?
Don't interrogate us.
Well, I tell you what it was, Steve. I actually wanted the answers to these questions. I thought, let me just ask them some really simple questions, because before that clip, they were dodging every single question that went to them, and I thought, it's my turn to ask a question. Let's have a couple of simple questions and then get the ball rolling. But the ball never got rolling, Claire.
I think the fact that they didn't know off the top of their heads a very important point like that means that they don't care. And when you were asking the question, genuinely, I thought, what is the answer? Because very often when you're having a discussion with people, particularly people who say, I don't know what you're fussing about the boats or whatever, I'll say, well, do we know exactly what's happening? And you're trying to get the detail of it. You don't want to just do the headlines. So you were asking a question that lots of us want to know. Right? Not because we're interested. No, as it happens, it's like misinformation at the beginning. I'm on the left, so I'm like one of your liberal lefties who's actually quite liberal on immigration, but I don't want it to be that to mean that we don't control our borders and that we don't know what's going on. And it drives me mad when they kind of say, it's not like that, they're all fleeing war. I just wanted to know.
Can I just say, this absolutely typifies the problem we have immigration in this country. We're looking through the wrong end of the telescope. We're constantly looking at the outcomes about, what we do with people when they're over here, what hotels we put. We should be looking right at the beginning. We should know who comes in, and we should be processing people on day one. Then we would know. And I hate to say this, but we've got to have ID cards if we're going to actually know who's in this country.
Well, we're talking about outcomes, Steve, and we saw the outcome of the Supreme Court a few weeks back, where they decided that there were problems with Rwanda. Obviously, that's being tweaked. The treaty is being drafted as we speak. And we've spoke about a plan B, and maybe part of the plan B, Claire, is leaving the ECHR.
I think that it has to be considered. I suppose my main thing, and this was when the Supreme Court spoke as well, every attempt at solving or resolving this problem seems to meet with barriers presented by people who have not been elected by anyone. Now, I appreciate the irony that I've not been elected, but I'm not standing in the way of policy, am I? And the reality in the House of Lords is, in every discussion on immigration, people say, you can't do that, you can't do that, you can't do that because of this, that and the other. And if you want to know why there's public frustration around immigration, it's being told that regardless of anything they demand, anything they vote for, you can't do it. I happen to think the Rwanda scheme's daft. I don't think it works very well, and it's a bit stupid. But that's not the point. Elected politicians, daft or otherwise, put forward a scheme, it goes through the Commons, the elected part, it gets to the House of Lords, they try and stop it, then they eventually have to give way. The next minute, the EHRC's there. Courts in Strasbourg, what? And then the Supreme Court say. So if you're a voting person in this country, it's going to make you disillusioned with democracy. You're going to go, what's the bloody point?
Claire, would you leave the ECHR?
Yes.
Stephen?
No, of course I wouldn't. Because don't forget that it was domestic legislation that actually caused this decision. Look, in America, they elect the judges. So if you want to be a judge in Cactusville, back at Beyondsville, you get elected. Do we really want to have our judges elected? Because they will be elected on party political grounds. Do we really want to have Labour, Tory, Liberal, whatever, judges? I don't think so. Look,
I don't think that's the only option.
I'm sorry, it's a lot easier to find a scapegoat than it is to find a solution. And at the moment, we seem to be looking for a scapegoat, and the ECHR
So what is the
solution,
Steve?
The solution is we process people in this country at the day of arrival.
Yeah.
Look, there's a lot of the immigrants to this country. We want to get them. We want to get them working. We want to get them paying taxes. If anyone thinks that we can send people back to Iran, where some mullah's going to be sharpening his scimitar on a sandstone, it's the minute you step off the plane, we're going to send them back to Kabul or Kandahar. Of course we're not.
Sorry.
So Stephen's talking as if the vast majority of the people crossing the channel are genuine asylum
No,
seekers.
not the vast majority. No, they're
I've
not.
been to France, Stephen. I've seen it with my own eyes. I've been on the camps.
I've been to Albania.
They are economic migrants.
Well, they're fit young men in many cases.
From African countries that are coming here.
And by the way, you can understand why fit young men would want to come here and improve their lives. No one's saying that. That's why I was talking about.
Well, that's about their interest, but I'm talking about the national interest. We should talk about the nation's interest, not their interest.
Yes, but it's certainly not in the nation's interest to lie to the British public about these things and to basically make them feel guilty and say you're going to, if you send them back, they're all going to die.
So, Claire, if you was speaking to these two hapless officials today round this table about this week's performance at the Home Affairs Select Committee, and you was their line manager, what would you be saying?
You've got the tin check.
I'd say not fit for purpose.
Yeah.
Right. Stop working from home. Get on top of your brief. I mean, there's about to be strike action now because they're going to have to go in for 3 days a week.
They're on strike.
No, I know, but I'm saying they're saying the idea that you call a strike because somebody's asked you to go into work 3 days a week, you do think, for God's sake. But in all seriousness, I'd say you are insulting the British public. You're there as public servants, and public service requires that you are able to answer elected officials when they ask you the most basic question. But just on the broader question of the European Court, a lot of people say, oh, well, we won't have human rights, we won't have freedoms if we leave. And it's like, do you think anyone's incapable of drawing up decent law? I mean, you might think maybe not, but the idea should be that we can have domestic laws made by us, which is improving on what we've got there. And even Lord Sumption, who actually in the past have argued with about this, he used to say we should never leave the European Court of Human Rights. He just come out and said, do you know what, having looked at their recent...
ECHR is not the European Court.
Sorry, that's why I get it wrong.
But why can't we have stronger and better laws in this country to protect our human rights?
We can.
Well, there you
Absolutely
go,
no reason why we should. But on the other hand, that doesn't mean that we have to actually abandon Churchill's vision of a European standard.
It's a different world. But also the other thing that you've got to bear in mind is I think that it becomes an excuse. And by the way, I think by the Conservative Party as much as anything else, because in the old days, it used to be the case that no matter what went wrong in this country, they'd say it's the EU's fault. Now, I'm a Brexiteer, but it used to annoy me that British politicians would rush over to Brussels and say, we've got an idea for a law, we don't want those grubby little voters having their say on it, so can you bring it in and then we'll blame you if people don't like it. Now the danger is that it does become a scapegoat in that way, which is an excuse for the government to say, what can we do? It's their fault. So I don't want that to be...
If we can go back to you as the line manager, these two hapless twerps who were
we agree on this.
Eviscerated by that. I mean, should they get the tin tack? What's going to happen to them? Or guess what? I reckon they'll be promoted and shuffled sideways. you keep thinking, do you remember Margaret Thatcher and Dennis Thatcher thing when Dennis said, gosh, how many people work in the civil service? And she said, about half of them.
Claire, final word on this.
If we do not resolve the situation of people feeling that nothing is being done about immigration, something they're passionate about. We've seen scenes in Dublin.
In Dublin, I was going to mention
Dublin. Dublin is exactly the kind of thing where the seething eruption of frustration will break out.
There comes a tipping point.
And we've seen things like Geert Wilders in Holland, right? So be careful what you wish for.
Interesting discussion, guys. We're going to go straight on to the yes or no quiz. Stephen, you've done this a few times. I think you've got the hang of it now.
Yes. No. Yes.
For you, Claire, it's simple. It's yes or no. And then at the end of the quiz, we can go back and qualify one of the answers. So we'll start with you first, Stephen. So Claire gets the gist of it. So number one is, should the Elgin marbles be sent back to Greece?
Yes.
Claire?
No.
Claire, Number 2, should we leave the ECHR?
Yes.
Stephen?
No.
Question 3, Claire, do you agree with the Labour's 20 mile per hour speed limit?
No.
Stephen?
Well, I dream of doing 20 miles an hour in West London.
He just doesn't get it, does it? It's a yes or no question. And
yes.
he's been on the show about 500 times and he can't even answer yes or no. So that's a wrong answer, Stephen. So we'll go back to you again, Stephen. Should we send illegal migrants to uninhabited British islands?
Yes.
Claire?
No.
Says no. Final question, Claire, for you first. Does Stephen Pound, former Labour MP and secret Tory, look like Ebenezer Scrooge?
Looks like him, yes.
Stephen?
Humbug.
Another wrong answer.
Exactly. I cheated too.
Another wrong answer. So 5 to you, Claire, and a paltry, pathetic 3 to Stephen. And he's played this game numerous times. He's still not got the gist of it. Claire, do you want to go back on?
I'm a slow learner.
I do want to go back on the 20 mile an hour because I'm Baroness Fox of Buckley. Buckley's in North Wales, and it was the town in which they piloted the 20 mile an hour thing.
And what have you done to annoy them?
Yeah, exactly.
What has Mark Drayford done?
I was getting these messages from people saying they've introduced this 20 mile an hour thing. Yeah. It's driving us mad. It's
not driving you anywhere.
Exactly. Anyway, I thought it was a joke. When they brought it out all over Wales, it is the most irresponsible, stupid, performative virtue signalling, and you will now have heard that ambulance drivers, firefighters, all sorts of people are saying it's causing serious threat to lives because you can't get to work to start doing the thing.
Well, I'm sorry, we got 20 mile an hour zones all over Ealing, and guess what? Nobody obeys them, nobody enforces them, nobody does a damn thing about it.
Yeah, we know down here, Steve.
They're enforcing it in Wales, but they're being fined.
Well, obviously, they're more efficient than the Met.
Collecting money off ordinary people.
Albert Embankment. I stop in a hotel up there sometimes, and 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, there's no traffic, it's a 20 mile an hour, you go on there 25 mile an hour, you get a speeding ticket. It's absolute nonsense.
Well, that's one of the constant arguments we hear about, why on earth should the same rules apply in the middle of the night? Do you know, when I first got elected, MPs never got speeding tickets because as an MP, you had to get the approval of the chief constable before a speeding ticket was issued. And Tony Blair, of blessed memory, decided immediately to put a stop to that.
Yeah.
Well, even I think that was a good idea. I mean, you can't have MPs cheating the bloody system.
We used to drive up to Manchester.
You're trying to defend.
No, it was like the paparazzi with it. And we just, there's another 10 speeding. But guess what? We're not going to get them.
Oh, Stephen, we could go on about this all day. Pathetic performance in the yes/no quiz.
Oh, thanks, Lee. That's the most complimentary
you
you've
should
ever
be coming and winning these now. You've had enough practice. Claire, well done for being the winner this week. But look, coming up, do not go away. We have got Gerald Stratford. He specialises in big vegetables. Coming up next.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show.
Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else.
We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride.
Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse.
It's news, but it's this close to entertainment.
Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Well, that's Last Orders at the Bar. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Gerald Stratford. Gerald, you are a social media influencer. You are a vegetable grower. You've got all sorts of, weird and wonderful vegetables that you grow in your garden. £300 pumpkins and courgettes, as long as you are. You're, like I say, a social media influencer. 300,000 followers on Twitter, which is X. Hundreds of thousands of followers on Instagram. You're a proper star now. And this is all through growing vegetables. Oh, and you're also a Gucci fashion guru as well. What sorted all this?
First of all, thank you for having me, Lee. It's nice that people want to talk to an old English gardener.
Old English gardener.
I don't do negatives and nasties and football and religion, and I just do me and my garden.
Yeah.
I think that's how people like me.
Yep.
Long may it continue.
But tell me about these cabbages. £80 a cabbage. How do you do that?
Well, first of all, you have to have the correct seed, and
How big's the seed?
Well, no, it doesn't work like that.
Okay.
A cabbage for an £80 comes from a seed the same size as a cabbage, that big.
Okay.
But you need to know how to grow it.
Yeah.
You have to have the correct compost, the correct environment, and in my eyes, lots of TLC. I do talk to them.
Yeah, do they talk back?
Yes, they talk back by growing so well.
Okay, so they respond?
Yes, they respond to me. It's not hard. It just
so from being a little seed to being an £80 cabbage, how long does that take?
The seed will be sown the end of February, beginning of March, and by the middle of August, I'll expect it to be the size I want it to be.
Okay, so that's about 4 or 5 months.
Yes.
And how many people would that feed, an £80 cabbage?
I don't know. I mean, the last one I grew wasn't so big this year, and I just cut it up in chunks and give it to family, friends.
So I guess when you put these things online on your Instagram or your X, you're getting lots of followers. People are looking for advice and tips. What's been the biggest one you've put on that's got the most comments?
Red cabbage.
Red cabbage?
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
I took a small video of me talking about a red cabbage.
Okay. You are a Gucci model, is that right? Is this Gucci what you've got on?
No.
So how did that happen?
Every night, my partner Elizabeth and myself, we sit down, turn the telly off, and go through our phones. We both got a phone, and messages, etc., come through.
Yeah.
And we answer them.
Right.
I spend 2, 3, 4 hours a day, every day, answering gardening questions. And one popped up saying, would you be so kind as to private message me, please? And it was from a company called Heisner Bioty. And I got in touch. They come back and asked for a Zoom and said that they were working on behalf of Gucci.
Yeah.
And several Zoom calls from all over the world. The last one was managed in Berlin. And after that, I was whisked off.
Whisked off?
In a limousine.
Wow.
One Thursday night in March 21. And I spent a few days on a private address in Hertfordshire with these fabulous models, 2 male, 2 females.
Really?
And it was just so nice, you know, to think that they were using young people to garden.
Yeah.
And
so, obviously, you've worked all your life, and then you get to the age of 75, and all this sort of fame and fortune descends upon you. That must seem really weird.
I've had little bits of fame on and off with another sport, fishing.
Fishing?
But not to the level of this.
Okay.
It's hard to imagine how I feel.
Well, you live in a dream. You live in the dream.
Yes,
aren't you?
that's the word.
I think what we're going to do
Live in
now,
a
look, we've
dream.
got you behind the bar because we do this every single week with our celebrity guests, and you are a celebrity guest, Gerald. We're going to have a go at pulling the pint. So look, Gerald, you might know a lot about vegetables and fashion stuff, but we're here for a reason, not just to tell your story, but to pull a pint. Pint pot. There's the pump. You've got 30 seconds to pull the perfect pint. So go for it, my friend. I'll pull it right back. That's it. That's it. It's, okay. It's a little bit frothy. It's a little bit quick. But keep going. Keep going. And when, as soon as you get to the top, you can just put it on the bar. That's it. We're full. Put that on the bar. Put on there. And what we got?
Oh.
It's not very good, is it?
No, that's a long time since I've done that.
It's a bit of a shocker. But what we're going to do is we're going to get one of our assistant producers in, which is Lily. Lily, come through, darling. Come here.
Evening.
This is Lily. Lily, what do you think?
Well, Gerald, I can tell you haven't done this before.
No,
Am I right?
I've drunk a lot, but not pulled a lot.
So you've drunk more than you've pulled it?
Yeah.
Well, there's a bit too much head on it. It's a bit frothy.
A bit frothy.
I don't think he'd get employed.
You could probably have a shake.
But it's a great effort.
So what we normally do, Lily, is we mark these out of 10 each week. I'm looking at it now. You're probably ready to drink in about 3 or 4 hours. But out of 10.
It's slowly going down. But...
Out of 10, what would you mark it?
Do you know what? I'd give it a good 6.
6, I think.
Don't
6.
want to be too harsh.
I think 6 is generous. Gerald, what do you think?
Oh, go on, give me a 7.
So you heard Gerald earlier, he talked about his vegetables, his giant marrows and massive pumpkins and, I'd be careful what I say here, and all sorts of large vegetables. Which one impressed you the most?
Well, I've seen your TikTok, Gerald, I must say.
It's on TikTok?
Yeah,
Oh.
it's on TikTok. TikTok's a sensation. I must say the cabbages.
The cabbages?
They are quite impressive.
Thank you.
I mean, do you have a lot of soup, Gerald?
Sauerkraut.
Yeah. Gerald, you didn't tell me about TikTok, did you? You kept that one to yourself.
I forgot.
I do a bit of TikTok. I'm going to go on TikTok. Well, I'm on TikTok. I'll have a look at you. I'll give you a follow. I'll give you a follow on Instagram and on Twitter as well. So, look, Gerald, it's been a pleasure to meet you, my friend.
Thank you very much, Lee.
Lily, thank you for stepping in at the last minute and judging Gerald's pint. Did you say 6?
6, yeah, I'd give it a good 6.
That's 6 out of 10. Thank you. Look, thanks for joining me once again on Friday night on Lee Anderson's Real World. Same again next week, 7 p.m. on GB News. But now we're going over to Mark Dolan, Friday Night Live. Have a great weekend.
You are watching Mark Dolan on GB News, and Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan starts in just a couple of minutes. I've got some brilliant guests for you. Could this royal racism row bring down the royal family? We'll speak to top royal insider, the former royal butler himself, Grant Harold. Plus, will Rishi Sunak be gone by Christmas? I'll be asking top and rather influential Tory backbencher Michael Fabricant. Also, should King Charles be going to COP28 navigate, or should you stay out of politics, and especially eco-politics? And of course, my big opinion, in which I'll be dealing with Greece and their efforts to get back the Elgin marbles. Not on my watch, I just won't have it. Why are we relinquishing our history and diluting the great power of the British Museum? So, top pundits and top stories. It is Friday night. Well, with me, Mark Dolan. See you in 2.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Evening, I'm Alex Deakin. This is your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. Turning cold out there this evening, and it's going to stay pretty cold for most of us this weekend. Ice and snow showers in places, and a pretty hard frost. Low pressure kind of drifting away from the UK, so the cold air that's in place isn't going anywhere. Some fog thickening up tonight as well. And we have Met Office yellow warnings in place. Wherever we've got showers, there's the potential for ice. Now, these showers will have some sleet and snow mixed in over eastern England, southwest Scotland, northwest England and northern Scotland. So, as I say, we've got some mist and fog thickening up too, particularly dense over parts of the Midlands as temperatures drop to -3, -4. That's in towns and cities. So a hard frost for Saturday. For many, it'll be a fine, bright, sunny day, but it'll take a while for the fog to clear. The showers should clear away from eastern England. We'll keep a few going in southwest Scotland, northwest England, with some snow over the hills. The odd rain shower for Wales and southwest England. But as I say, for most, dry and sunny but cold. Temperatures 1 or 2 degrees, particularly if that fog lingers, maybe a little higher in the southwest. Slightly milder air comes in across the south during Sunday. There could well be some sleet and snow for a time on Sunday morning over the Midlands and eastern England, and then the potential for more wet weather to come in later in the southwest. That could also have some snow mixed in, chiefly over hills. It is slowly trying to turn milder across the...
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Who is it? We're here for the show.